you mentioned how you didn't have that representation growing up, and here you are, kind of full circle, you became that representation.
Yeah, that is a very important piece for me. And I carry that with uh, a, a lot of responsibility. I will be honest with you. I wish that I had somebody that I could have spoken to when I was a teenager, struggling so hard, and even into my 20s, but I didn't. And I want to be that person for an individual that is really needing some support or a listening ear.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Shafer, your host of Talks with Dr. Shafer. I'm a physician, mom, life coach, musician, author, and publisher, and I'm passionate about helping you use storytelling as a tool to reclaim your story and create your most beautiful future. And today we have a philanthrotainer and an activist, auctionista, speaker, and MC, Layne, who does just that. They are so inspirational, and they are here today to help guide us through not only their story, but what they are doing to help elevate other people's stories. Layne, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me. Let's do this.
So, Layne, tell me about the big pivot in your life when you started to be an auctionista.
Well, that was a very interesting time in my life because I was at that time a pretty successful financial advisor. I was just moseying along life and doing my thing and enjoying my job. And very randomly, my wife and I were invited to a dinner gala auction. One of our very close friends was an executive director at a women's shelter. And they said, hey, we're having this annual fundraiser. Why don't you and Sue come along and join us at our table? And I was 46 at the time. And I said, sure, that sounds great. I can do a chicken dinner and, come and support your organization. But what I didn't understand was what that all looked like. I literally turned to Sue and I said, so what do we do when we're there? What happens? Do we bring a wallet? Do we bring a checkbook? What is this thing called the charity gala? And I had never been to one. I grew up, I'm a child of immigrants. And, a lot of what we did in our culture happened within our cultural space, whether it was the church basement or other cultural events. And even as I grew into adulthood, I was just never exposed to, this charity gala thing. I'd never been there. So we go to the event and we sit down at the table, and I see all these tables around the perimeter of the room, ugly Afghans and, oil baskets and bicycles and toasters and all these sheets of paper. And so Sue explained, well, that's a silent auction. That's where you write, your bids. Okay, I get it. And after the dinner, there he comes, Mr. Auctioneer, approaches the podium, and for 2 hours, he sold item after item after item. And of course, I didn't know the guy was a livestock auctioneer. I knew nothing about auctioneering. But what was really jarring to me was the way that this was presented. It was just like moving product through. And I don't know if you've ever watched the Flintstones. Have you ever watched? Do you know
I
the
have,
Flintstones?
yeah, I
Okay.
have.
So do you know when Wilma or Fred runs through the house, it's a repeat table, lamp, chair, table, lamp, chair, table, lamp, chair. That's what the auction was like. Bicycle, toaster, art, bicycle, toaster, art. And for 2 hours. And it was jarring because it didn't seem so friendly, right? It was pretty pressure cooker. It was all about moving the items through. There was some calling out about, hey, I know how much money you folks make, so let's get going. And in that moment, I turned to Sue and I said, gosh, I could totally do that. She's like, honey, honey, okay, you're a financial advisor. Yep, you are, you're a people person, but you're no auctioneer. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to find a little bit more out about this. So when
Mm-hmm.
dinner ended, I moved all the chairs out of the way. I was trying to get to the back of the house and find this gentleman. And I approached him and I basically said, how do I learn to do what you just did, this auctioneering thing?
Yeah.
And he looked at me, and no word of a lie, these are the 8 words that he said. Hey, little missy, first of all, you start any sentence off like that, and there's so much we can unwrap in those 3 words, right? And then the rest of it, this is a generational job. So all I heard was, you're not welcome, Layne. This is a man's game. This is a closed club. You don't qualify. You can't turn. And he just ignored me and he walked away. And I thought to myself, in that very moment, I thought, oh, no, 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 no. You know what? I am going to figure this thing out and I'm going to do some research. And for the following 6 months, I was obsessed with figuring out, how do I become an auctioneer. I knew that I wanted to do this fundraising thing, which I didn't even really understand what that was. And 6 months later, I was driving from Toronto to auction school in Mason City, Iowa.
Auction school. That's fascinating. What is auction school?
Well, it's a
Auction
group.
school.
It's auction school. It's 96 hours of grueling tongue twisters,
Wow.
and they also, have their guest auctioneers that represent the different types of auctioneering. So livestock, real estate, car, charity, all of those. So you learn about the full gamut of auctioneering that is available and doable out there. But I think for me, the most jarring thing was when I walked into the reception that night, I saw the sea of males, male identifying. Well, we know that they're not, I was not the only gay in the village, but let's just say
Sure.
it appeared that way.
Statistically speaking, right?
Statistically speaking, a bunch of those boys watched Brokeback Mountain a few times. That's for sure. But there they were, the generational auctioneers. They had the big hats, the big silver buckles, and I thought, oh my gosh, Mr. Auctioneer was right. Like, this is not, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And I have never felt so intimidated in my entire life. I went back to my hotel room, I picked up the phone, and back then it was the phone, and I called Sue and I said, I'm not doing this. This is not for me. I'm not doing this. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. And she said, no, you're not. You have been in auction like land for 8 months. You're staying, you're going to do it, and it'll be fine. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if it's going to be fine. And that's how my auction school, began, with such an intense feeling of vulnerability, an intense feeling of intimidation, intense being of somebody. So not just on the margins as somebody who has no auction experience, but also that very vulnerable piece of not being able to be my true self.
Yeah.
And be my authentic self, be feeling on the margins as a non-binary individual too. So it was a very difficult space for me to emotionally navigate. But I stayed. I did it. I still to this day, I am not a fast talker, and I don't chant quickly. I don't do that. But I've also embraced that about myself, because it's not the fast chant that I don't think has made me as successful as I am. I think it's who I am, that I have a heart, and I care about philanthropy and humanity. And it doesn't matter how fast I do my number sequences. I can inspire people to take action and support. And, I have found my way to do it in the Layne way. Early on, I watched a ton of YouTube videos. It's like, what does that auctioneer do? What does that auctioneer do? And you know what? I thought to myself, no, what am I doing? I got to do it in such a way that's going to be authentically me. And that's
Yeah.
what I've done for the last 15 years.
That's awesome. And obviously, you've had a big impact. And one thing that you have said in other speaking engagements is, that you see yourself as a philanthrotainer, not as an auctioneer, right? You're entertaining, you're connecting, and you're bringing something to the auction that really helps elevate the experience and make it entertainment. As I led, to our listeners today, like, get ready to be entertained, because you can't not have Layne with you and learn something in a really fun way and come away from it feeling, touched and just joyful.
Well, thank you. That's my DNA. That is completely my DNA. And, I really wanted to take away that transactional aspect of auctioneering and really, as you say, connect with humans and, the importance of giving of our time and our resources to others to help lift them up. So it's been an incredible career. And, the crazy part is when I came back from auction school, I had such small vision for my business aspirations. I was a successful financial advisor. I did move to the charitable sector. I became a director of development, a fundraiser. But I always had this auctioneering thing caught in my head, like, you know what? I'm going to do 2 or 3 gigs a year, paper trip to Costa Rica. And Canada is very different in terms of its development in that gala space. In the US, you've got New York and California and Florida. You've got Seattle and Chicago. You've got these massive gala charity areas with, auctioneers galore. When I came back to Canada, I had no market. I had no clients. I had no marketing. I had no pricing because I had no role model, nobody to talk to, and nobody to, kind of mentor me. I had to figure out the whole thing from scratch. So my very first auction that I did, well, it wasn't very good, but the very first auction that I did, they said, well, you know what? Al, the auctioneer, has been doing our auctions for 15 years, and Al is free. And I said, well, that's great, but I'm bringing a whole other level of skill and entertainment and resources and this training that I have. I said, I'm sorry, I cannot do it for free. But what I will do is I will do it for $250 in a chicken dinner. And that's and and that was the way it started.
I love that. I love that story. And I also love, you were very successful as a financial advisor. You were pulling more than that, right? But yet you're coming into this new space. You need to approach it differently. You're trying to figure out how to price yourself in a world that there's not necessarily a template. There's not a blueprint for how to do it. How did you feel, even though you could pull that, you were an expert in a different field, in this new field where you felt a bit like an outsider? How did it feel to put that number out there and kind of wait for the response?
Well, the number then is very different than the number now.
Absolutely.
And, that is a beautiful thing because I think, I really did change the landscape in Canada for what an auctioneer is, what they're capable of, what the skill is, and what should be expected. You're putting a lot of, results in the hand of somebody who could be there raising $250,000 or $500,000 for you and giving your guests the true feeling of gratitude and just this pure joy. Or, you could put it into the hands of a board member who that's not their skill set, right?
Right.
So, I found very quickly one auction turned into 3, turned into 10, turned into 20. to the point where I was doing my full-time job at the charity I was working for, and I was also running a full-time business, and I had to make the decision. I was at that fulcrum point, and I thought, you know, this auctionista thing is, it's so natural for me. I feel like a salmon. Just it's easy. It
Yeah.
flows. And when I'm on stage, I don't know how to express it otherwise. I feel, other than that, I am in this state of just complete internal and personal enlightenment and
Mm.
complete joy, and doing something that comes so naturally to me. So it was, I mean, sure, it was not easy. I also had a partner who was, had a great job. And, I think I had built up my auctioneering business to the point where when I let go of the 9 to 5, the, weekly salary, we knew that we would be okay. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that I could keep developing the business. And as soon as I left the job, my business exploded because now I was 150% in,
Yeah.
and totally focused. And yeah, it's but it hasn't been easy. That's for sure.
Yeah.
There's challenges, and I would say that the challenges for me have been not so much the revenue side of things, um, but more the personal side of things, and being the
Mm-hmm.
receiver of discriminatory moments, and malicious DMs, and
Mm.
microaggressions, because I'm me, and I'm authentically me, and I don't waver from that. I am Layne.
Right.
I'm a non-binary individual. My pronouns are they, them. I dress how I feel comfortable dressing. I'm always turned out to the T. I know my job very well, but there are individuals out there that feel that they want to challenge that in some way, and sometimes very publicly. So I would say for me, that's been a tough side of the business for me.
Yeah. How have you figured out for yourself how to cope with that so that you can, as you said, stay focused, because you found when you're focused, man, it's like lightning in a bottle that you found.
Yeah, and I've got 15 years of stage experience, and my natural personality is, I'm very loving and kind. And when those moments happen in an auction room, and I'll give you a very specific example so that your
Mm-hmm.
listeners understand, maybe give it a little bit more context. So I was in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of a live auction. So, I've got two people that are bidding back and forth. So, 4,000 over here, 5,000 over there, 4,000, 5,000 here. I go back to the person and say, $6,000. Are you in at six? We're having a grand old time. They literally stop, cross their arms, and they say, "Are you a man or a woman?" And this is a room in a room of 400 people.
Mm.
And so, I, as a performer, you have to take that in. You have to absorb that and keep
Yeah.
going. You've got a job to do. So, my answer is, hey, does it really matter? And tell me now, are you in at 6,000? And we
Yeah.
move on.
Yeah.
So in that moment, I'm very capable of coping with that.
Yeah.
It's, when you experience cumulative
Right.
microaggressions,
Yeah.
then you start feeling that micro trauma, right? And there have been times that, I've come home and I've been in tears. I'm human, I have a
Right.
heart. I have feelings. I'm I just live it all out on my sleeve. So my heart on my sleeve. So, there are definitely moments where these microaggressions accumulate. And even me, after 15 years in this business, at the top of the heat, there are times when Layne says to themselves, am I actually any good at this? It's like, am I, because when you experience all this microaggression, micro trauma, you start, the imposter syndrome starts coming out.
Yeah.
You start thinking, you know, hesitating, maybe saying, maybe I shouldn't do things that way. That could be very much your natural way of doing things, but now you're
Mm-hmm.
shifting to accommodate, or the fear of something. So, these are the things that I talk about in my keynote speaks, and also, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging training. Um, I've had a lot of experience with folks over the years. You think about 1,500 events, all the organizers, all the guests, all the planning people. I've got a lot of people experience. So, I want to take my voice, and I am taking my voice to be on the ballroom now. I know that I can move people to action to support charities, and now it's about, creating an understanding and knowledge about gender identity and the sense of belonging, and teaching folks about, how to become practicing active allies for everyone.
Yeah.
It's so important, when we can't be our authentic selves, we hurt, and we hurt others, and sometimes we hurt ourselves, and sometimes we cope in ways that are not healthy for us. So if we can all come to a place where we can celebrate our differences and, work towards, a world, a community, even a workplace, we can start macroing that down, even to, within your family, that you're accepting of all, and, use your privilege for good, right? Speak up to injustices,
Mm-hmm.
and help marginalized and vulnerable groups of people live their best possible lives.
That's wonderful. And I really love how it's something that I talk about in my life when I really reclaimed my story, how when you lean into it, the way I've seen it is like first you're pushing a boulder uphill, right? You're like, oh, I'm pushing this boulder, right? And it's so hard. But then once you actually get the momentum in the direction that you're meant to go in, all of a sudden it's going downhill and it's picking up steam and it's growing and it's growing. And so you started being an auctionista, but then that grew and you felt your purpose growing. And again, I imagine in a way it was frightening in the same sense that becoming an auctionista was frightening when you first did it.
Actually, no, it
Yeah.
wasn't frightening at all. And I'll tell you why. Um, you know, in my life, like many of us, we've overcome traumas.
Mm,
Life is not a linear journey. We have hills and we have valleys. And I truly
mm-hmm.
believe when we go through the most difficult, darkest times, we are also coming out through a growth period and a learning period, right?
Right.
And I trust so deeply that process that I know that every trauma that I have gone through, every heartache, every difficulty, I have learned from that. I am more grounded. I have new skills, and I trust myself. I turned this idea of auctionista into a wonderful business, but not just a business, but an entity that has raised more than $50 million for charity. I
Wow.
know, that I can accomplish anything that I set my mind to. So I never really talked about myself. It was Layne the auctionista coming in, and it's not
Mm,
about me. It's about charity. It's about other folks. So when COVID hit, all of
mm,
a sudden we started getting knocks on the door. You know what? We need a little Layne in our. We need that joy. We need some spunk. Would Layne do a keynote for our, healthcare provider, our clinicians, or would Layne,
mm,
do a virtual stand-up comedy thing for ex staff? And it started organically happening, and I started exposing myself a little more and a little more, and the response was tremendous, absolutely tremendous. And I really started thinking to myself, wow, if I can have an impact on people, a positive impact, and bring joy to folks, and learning and education, and build empathy and kindness in a different way, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do it. And so I was never really fearful of entering this foray of keynote speaking.
mm,
Never. It just seemed like a very natural evolution to
mm-hmm.
Layne on stage. That's really what it was. And I love it. I love doing it. It's great. I
That's
get to meet a
amazing.
whole new set of people.
That's amazing. And so you went to speaking, and now that's growing even further into the educational piece beyond just the speaker role, which is a huge role, a new adventure. But tell us a little bit about the educational piece.
Well, we developed a training called Impact Workshop, and it is DEIB. It's diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And our slice of the diversity pie is gender identity. Of course, that there's intersectionality abounds, right? It could be, a gender, um, gender and religion and cultural all intersect. But we're really looking at the gender identity piece. What I was finding from a personal perspective was people didn't understand what a non-binary is. So I say non-binary individual, and they're okay, whatever, you're trans. Or I changed my pronouns to they them, and we have a media kit. I'm very fortunate in that I have a promotional media kit. When you announce Layne on stage, it's Layne the Auctionista. When you refer to Layne, it's they them pronouns. And I've had incidents where I can hear that they're reading my approved intro, but they're changing pronouns. Because why? Because they think they can, because they don't understand, because they're who knows. So, for me, I thought, wow, I think I can make an impact on training on this subject matter, but what I didn't want was to deliver a lecture to anybody, because I don't lecture. That's just not my style. I'm animated. I'm what can I say? I'm just Layne. So there's no way I could stand behind a podium. So I said, if we're going to do this, we're going to create something so incredibly unique that is going to engage our audience, keep them engaged, actionable. It's going to be a foundation for further, EDI strategies within the corporation. So, we've got role playing, we've got group discussions, we've got gamifications, there's videos. And the other big piece that I have included is storytelling about my life experience as an LGBTQ plus person, as a non-binary person, to really give that connective context to humans, right? Because I can say, well, non-binary is this, and misgendering, makes people feel like this, but I actually provide the real stories of my life. And I can see the faces of the participants. They're, sometimes their hands are over their mouth going, I actually say this stuff to you.
Yeah.
Fathom that, and you really relate, and people remember what they feel, right? They don't remember what they see. Put it up on a slide, the impact's not going to be there. So I'm an open book. I'm probably the most vulnerable Layne that I've been in my entire life. But I think it's important. I think it's important for folks to understand the reality, and to understand that we need to do better. And of course, I don't believe in the cancel culture at all. I believe truly that we're human. We're going to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. I make mistakes too every single day. But what it's not okay is to make a mistake and not do better.
Right.
This is what we have to do. We just have to do better. Layne, I misgendered you. I'm sorry. I recognize that. I acknowledge that. And that's not going to happen anymore. So,
Exactly.
I have a cute little saying, I'm going to give you your get out of pronoun jail card free. If you can't remember my pronouns, just say my name, say my name. Just say my name. Just call me Layne. Just don't use the pronoun, and then you'll never make a mistake. Give me a little Destiny's Child, right?
I mean, I love how you use humor, but I also really appreciate your vulnerability in sharing how it feels for you to be misgendered and those micro traumas, because we're all out here living our life. We're all in our head, and we're not only in this moment, we are carrying with us. And you've told this story in other interviews, how sometimes when a really egregious statement is lobbed your way, right, that takes you back to the the earliest times in your development where you're feeling that you're not fitting in to this binary reality, and someone is very unkind to you, and you really take that to heart, because when we're little, right, everything is about us. That's how our brains work. We don't know how to say, this isn't about me, this is about them. And even as we grow and learn that, it's not about me, it's about them, it's about their education, it's about, their mistake, maybe they're tired, or maybe they're mean, but they're mean, I'm not mean, it's not about me, right? Even though we cognitively know that, we're still carrying around those little kids that had those experiences, and sometimes it's hard to cope.
That's right. That's what we call a trigger.
Yep, exactly.
That is what we call a trigger. And I thank you for, I want to acknowledge that I so appreciate that you took the time to delve into my story and to do some research, because that misgendering did send me back, catapulted me back to little 7-year-old Layne, standing in the bathroom and saying to themselves, you're not so-and-so, my dead name. But there's something wrong with you. There's no representation. I didn't know what representation was, but certainly, like, there was no gay uncle on the Flintstones. Media did not even expose any of that. And, where I grew up, just outside of Toronto in Hamilton, Ontario, so there was no way to even, I just thought there was just something wrong with me. So I just bent to societal expectations, and I carried on my life, as a female identifying. And, it just came to the point where it was bubbling, bubbling, bubbling. And it's like, I simply can't live like this anymore. I can't. I'm just so unhappy, you know?
Yeah. So
Guess
when,
what?
yeah,
People still love me.
of course. Well, and
They
that's
still
the
love me.
problem. That's the problem with shame, right? It has almost nothing to do with reality. And when we make decisions based on shame, how someone is shaming us, or saying, well, you can't be that, what will people think? People, honestly, if they think something, it's for a moment, right? They don't really care. But what matters more is, what does Layne think, and how does Layne feel? Because Layne has to live with Layne forever, not with these other people.
But let me just say that to come out to one's family, this is not about shame. This is about belonging.
Yeah.
Belonging is such a huge word for me. People say, oh, isn't belonging the same thing as being included? No, it's actually not. It's not
No.
close, right?
Yeah.
Included is like, hey, I'm going golfing on Friday. You coming? You're included. That doesn't mean that you feel like you belong there. That's like me in auction school. I felt like I didn't belong there. The sense of belonging is that true space of, that sense of when you come through the doors at the end of the day into your home, and you're like, and home is safe, and I can be myself, and I can do the things so just naturally be there. But coming out to a family is about belonging. It's not just around one's shame. It's about the fear of rejection. It's about the fear of not being loved anymore. It's the fear of exposing yourself to who you really are. That's not going to fit the status quo or the norm. And so, that's a very, very difficult moment. And that has to come at the right time for each individual. The worst thing you can do is out somebody. That is the cruelest thing to do, right? It's up to the individual to choose and the time that they feel is right for them.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing your experience and the vulnerability you felt in those moments, and that advice for listeners. I know that there are people who want to share and maybe don't feel they have a safe space, and they fear being rejected by the safe adults in their life.
Right. And that might mean having to find new safe adults. I am very grateful that, because I am a public figure and I'm quite well recognized in Canada, um, I will have folks DM me and say, can I talk to you? Can I just talk to you? People I don't even know. And of course, my answer is immediately, yes, let's get on a Zoom, and, sometimes we need to process with somebody that's not in our squad. We need to process with, a different perspective, point of view, and with somebody that's maybe a little bit further down the line in terms of, their identity and authenticity and comfort in their own skin, just to get a sense that, okay, if Layne can do this, I can do it too. I can do it, right?
And that goes back to, as you said, the representation, which you are, you mentioned how you didn't have that representation growing up. And here you are, kind of full circle, you became that representation.
Yeah, that is a very important piece for me. And I carry that with uh, a, a lot of responsibility. I will be honest with you. I wish that I had somebody that I could have spoken to when I was a teenager, struggling so hard, and even into my 20s, but I didn't. And I want to be that person for an individual that is really needing some support or a listening ear. And I've had people from all walks of life reach out on various matters, but, queer folks saying, just seeing you on stage, Layne, being who you are, doing your thing your own way, it just gives me so much, internal, you know, how can I say it? I have potential too, and I can have these things. I can have these things, and I think that's so important.
That's amazing.
It's a nice feeling.
Yeah.
It's a nice feeling, and like I said, I take it seriously, and yeah, it's like that's kind of been part of my journey. I didn't start off that way thinking I would be that person, that support person in that way, but yes, it's kind of naturally developed into that, and it's I'm happy to help folks.
Yeah, and I love that flow of your journey and how leaning into not only who you are authentically, like that's step one, right? You can't even find your path if you're not leaning into who you really are. It won't show itself.
Right. And one of the things I always say is, I had no idea that breaking the stereotype, that doing this job that I didn't even know was a job, I would find my superpower in terms of what I can give to this planet while I'm on it, and what I can give for myself at the same time. So it's amazing. Sometimes, we are so stuck in societal expectations. Go to school, get an education, get married, have two kids, and stay in that job for 30 years, or, or change your job every 2 years because, that's what really matters is the career, right? But I have always said, we have two daughters, and I've always said to them, what you should be focused on is doing something that you love. Not about being a doctor, unless you love that, of course, but not going by title. Title means nothing because you could say to yourself, I'm going to be a chiropractor. But if you actually look at the job description, you might say, I'm not touching anybody.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
I speak to college kids and, pre-college kids, and this is what we talk about in terms of, finding the right career. When you feel absolute joy with what you're doing, it is not a job. It is a beautiful thing because it's seamless. It's easy. Not to say there aren't hard days. There are hard days. But for the most part, I'm doing exactly what aligns perfectly with me as a human being. I don't want to work for somebody else. I've always known that I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm just best like that. I like to lead, and I like to make the decisions, and I like to have a handpicked team around me that is, fully into the same vision and mission. So I've always known that. So I knew that was something that I needed to accomplish. And here I am.
And you have.
I'm in the third act of my career. I'm going to be 62 later this year, and I still got stuff I need to get done and do, right?
That's wonderful. And I just so appreciate your story and how you pivot and how you don't focus on labels. And in labels, I mean the labels that we put on ourselves just in life in general. I know, as a physician in the world of medicine, so many people go into medicine for the label because they think with that will come prestige, money, and honestly, probably more often than any of those things, they're looking for approval from certain authority figures in their life or from a society. They're trying to show I am worthy.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. I did not go to college. I went to college for a semester, and it's just enough,
You're like the person who started Facebook and all of the other amazing people who that wasn't their journey.
No, it just wasn't. And I've worked my way up through various jobs prior, and I'm a hands-on learner. That's just the way I do things. And I truly believe, the path is different for each of us, right? But you got to do what you love, and if you're not doing what you love, you got to go find it, because that's the ultimate meaning of life, right?
Yeah.
Happiness,
Yeah.
joy, and why can't your job feel like playtime? Because it does for me.
Exactly. We have to
I'm
grow.
on stage. I'm having a great time up there. I'm just doing my thing. I'm doing Layne. I'm having fun with people. I'm loving it. They're loving it. And a doctor once said to me, I was doing an event for Women's College Hospital here in Toronto. They are an incredible hospital. They're a research hospital. I was sharing a green room with several speakers, and one who was a doctor of anesthesiology, something like this. And I got off stage. I came back into the green room, and she says to me, Layne, do you know what? You have, what I have it written down here. You have accessed your internal pharmacy.
I love that. That's great. That's great.
You know where
you can
you
push
probably
a button.
know exactly what I'm gonna say. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And she says, you and your endogenous opioids, you are Lemonade Layne. Your job and how you love your job and what you do is filling your body with all I'm making all those serotonin, oxytocin things naturally.
Yeah.
She goes, you're lemonade, baby. You're lemonade.
Oh, that's delicious. I love that.
Right? So when I say that to you, that I've accessed my internal pharmacy, you love that. So I want to hear your perspective on that.
No, I mean, I love that. And my response to it, as I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking, is it that they accessed or creating something new and different that someone else's brain doesn't have? Or is it that they have leveled up into being able to not put all of the barriers up that most of us are putting to our true emotions and our true authentic responses? And it's there. And I kind of like that even more, because that really goes along with your teaching piece and what I want to teach people too about. You can do this too. You can access this. It's possible. And it's not even always building up something. It's tearing down the things that are getting in your way.
Yeah. One of the other topics I speak on is the power of play. And I cite a book that is written by a hospice nurse, and the book is The 5 Regrets of the Dying. And I looked at those 5 regrets, and I thought to myself, wow, what if play, adult play, would actually ward off some of those regrets? Because, some of the regrets were, oh, I'm isolated. I don't have social connection anymore. And I started thinking to myself, when we're little, our only job is to play, because play is emotionally and physically and socially developing us. So that's our job as little ones, right? Little 3-year-olds, little 4-year-olds, little crusty little 4-year-olds. That's your job, is to
Yep.
play.
Yeah.
But why has somebody said that's child's play? Do you know how important it is to have that sense of play? Because that keeps social connection. It keeps our minds going. It's social, it's emotional, it's physical, it's all of those things. And so if we played every single day as adults, what would our very senior years and, our closing years actually look and feel like?
That's a beautiful question to pose, and I completely agree with you. And it makes me, my reflection on that is, I think, well, when do we feel the happiest? When we as observers are seeing someone? Children? Puppies? Someone like Layne? Someone like Robin Williams? Right? I think, that's a very universal figure that very few people want to go out and commit to behaving like Robin Williams. But if you were going to say, if I had to sit with someone on a plane for 6 hours, who would I want it to be? It would be Robin Williams, right?
Well, there's something called the inner child. And I think that I am very connected to my inner child. I love them, I respect them, and I need them in my life, because that inner child keeps me bouncy and trouncy and keeps me playing. I need them badly. And if you're not connected to that little person, I think you're missing out on the potential of what life can look like for you.
I agree fully. Do you have any advice for listeners how you've gone through that process? Let's say you're in a challenging time, right? And it's harder to access little Layne.
Yeah.
Is there a process you go through to get back to that person?
So, I kind of call it the stop, drop, and roll. That's what I kind of call it. I need to process. So I process my challenges a lot. I have 2 or 3 people that I can do that with very safely and very securely. And I will also break the cycle. So if I'm having a very challenging day, and I call it a backwards day, it's like 3 steps forward, 10 back, and I don't fight the universe on that. I don't fight it. I'm like, okay, I'm done canceling this meeting, doing that. I am not in the right frame of mind. I need to disrupt that, and I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go on my ATV if I'm out at the cottage. I'm going to do something that is playful, that is going to completely disrupt that energy.
I love that. The stop, drop, and roll. And I think, everyone can reflect on that in their own way and think about what's the thing. So for me, I've had a really busy day, and I've been so blessed to speak to people from across the world today. But I also had about 3 minutes in between each opportunity.
That's barely enough to do what.
I know
That
it.
is not good. Can
I
I just
know
tell you?
it. It's been since 5 this morning. But
That's a lot.
you know what though? I resonate so much with what you discussed about when you're really leaning into your truth, your authentic self, and your path. You're just going, right? You've got this forward momentum, and you have so much energy that it's not even about coping. You're just like, hey, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
But, for me, in those moments when I can actually tell, okay, the rare moment when my battery is on low and things are starting, the neurons are not communicating the way they need to. There's going to be a malfunction any moment now. What can I do to reset? For me, it's listen to a song and sing it like messy and silly, like messy. You know, like Taylor Swift, but Daddy, I love him with the arms going and pretending, you know, I don't know if you know this song, but she says, you know, I'm running with my dress unbuttoned, screaming, but Daddy, I love him. I mean, the imagery there is like hilarious. I think, you know, she's an excellent poet and songwriter. And so for me, taking 3 minutes that I don't have to do that can reset me. And so I love this idea of the stop, drop, and roll, because the roll part, right? Like it doesn't have to be a long time, but it's a reset. It's like recess. We need that even as adults. I love it.
Exactly. So it all comes back to being kids. And it's like, if we actually think about what our lives were like and how, you know, X amount of hours of school, X amount of hours of play. And I get it. You know what? We got to pay the bills. We got to do the mortgage. We got to take the car in for the oil change. But like everything else, you have to work it into your routine and your structure. It's so important. You know, years ago, somebody told me about forest bathing. And I did kind of laugh a little bit because I'm a type A. And we know I'm not the yoga person, right? Like I can't lay there with like people next to me, and I just like, it's way too but I think that I was in a different place in my life. I was like, go, 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 entrepreneur, on the go, on the go. And when we bought our cottage, we have an abundance of woods and forest around us. I never wanted to go in the trails. I say to Sue, you know what? I'm going to pass. I'm going to pass. I'm just going to scroll on socials. And then I realized over time, as I kind of opened my mind to it, I spent more time walking in the woods, and I could feel my blood pressure coming. I could feel the different conversations I was having with Sue, the different thoughts I was having in my mind. And I realized, you know, being out in nature, it's important to us. It's important, like I said, to stop, drop, and roll, disconnect, get away, and just bring it down. At the end of the day, you know, when I'm going to be lying in my casket, I don't think that people are going to be saying, you know what, Layne was the best auctioneer I ever met. What I want them to say is to say, you know what, Layne was kind. Layne knew how to live their life. Layne played hard. They worked hard, and, you know, kind human. I want to be remembered for that human thing. And the best of us, of the human side of us, doesn't always generate through the work we do, right? It's through the relationships we have. It could be through work, you know, but I'm just saying, you know, it's being with people, it's having those boundaries, it's giving to yourself as well, right? Not emptying out that cup, but filling it up with all the things that, you know, can really make you a grateful and, you know, kind and fulfilled human being.
That is so beautiful, Layne. I could talk to you for hours and just go back and forth, but I think that is the perfect place to end the conversation. You are so inspiring, and I'm so excited to follow along on the journey as you are increasing the educational piece and the speaker piece. One thing, you know, that I did want to tell you on a personal side. So my daughter is actually going to be participating in an auction for the first time. She is 10 and she's the author. I have her books here because I wanted to bring this up to you. So she's the author of these books, Foxtails and Foxtails 2. So as a part of her philanthropy, because she's big into philanthropy, one of the things she's doing with our local humane society is auctioning off characters in the new book series she's writing, which is called Shelter Dogs. And
how old is she?
She's 10. Her first book she published when she was 8. I know, she's amazing. She's a cutie pie too.
She's amazing.
Well, that's her when she's a little older. She'd probably appreciate me showing. Oh, where is it? Showing the picture that she's older.
Oh my gosh, what a beauty!
That's our disabled, our differently abled butterfly that was born and it couldn't fly. So we just we kept it as a pet until it it passed.
This is so special.
So
Tell me more. This, oh my gosh, this child is
well,
special.
I wanted to connect it with you because it was a special connection to have the opportunity to talk to you and think about this upcoming experience for her. And I'm looking forward to her watching this show as an introduction for her hearing, about a Philanthrotainer and getting ready for this event. So she's working with the Humane Society to help raise money for our local shelter. And a part of that is she's auctioning off characters in her upcoming book, Shelter Dogs, and people will be able to name the dogs. So if they have, a beloved pet or even a child that they want to be a main character to be named after, they can bid for that opportunity.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that so much. Wow, what an inspiration. At 10 years old or at 6 years old, the watch out.
Yeah.
Big things coming.
For sure. And I just
on the planet. That's beautiful.
Thank you so much. And I think, I wanted, because I know how much it means to her to be involved in that. And so I just truly personally feel very connected with the work you do, because philanthropy, as you call it, I mean, it's really important. And I think that we have this opportunity to help people share their generosity through charities. Not everyone has an opportunity to do that, but then you have people who are really just inspired to share their wealth and their gifts to things that they really want to support. And you being someone who facilitates that in such a meaningful and fun way, it just touches my heart. And I'm so grateful to have had this opportunity to speak with you today about both your work and also the advocacy that you do, just to make sure that we're creating a world that is just more inclusive in general.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for creating this beautiful, safe space for me to be my true, authentic self with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Layne. I appreciate you so much. And thank you to our listeners. If you have questions or comments for us, please leave them in the show notes. I will have all the information to find Layne and to potentially book Layne for your upcoming event. I certainly would if I had a charity that I was looking for someone to be my Philanthrotainer. So thank you so much. They are amazing. And we were so blessed to have them on the show today. Stay safe and take care.